Today, I'm trying something new. I recently shared a post on social media called Scrolling versus Connecting, and it sparked a thoughtful and interesting response from my friend Harvey Hazen. So I thought rather than exchanging a whole bunch of comments online, why not just record a conversation and post that instead? So I'm going to read the post, and then Harvey is going to share his thoughts and we're going to just discuss this however long it needs to be discussed. So that's what we're going to do. Okay, so here is the post. Have you ever noticed the language we use around social media? We say things like, I was scrolling Instagram, I was scrolling Facebook, I was scrolling on TikTok. Scrolling, not connecting, not learning, not understanding, just scrolling. And after 20 minutes, what do we usually have to show for it? Ads, politics, sponsored posts, a stranger arguing with another stranger, a funny video we'll forget in an hour. So much noise. And then how do we feel during and afterwards? Now compare that to what I've heard people say after using the Uchi app. Last night, I spent some time connecting on Uchi, not scrolling, connecting. One parent shared that their son expressed a thoughtful opinion about their local community that they had never heard before or even knew he was aware of. Another person learned a story from a friend's teenage years that had never come up in decades of friendship. Different behavior, different outcomes. Maybe the language matters. Maybe the words we use reveal what we're actually doing. Scrolling is passive, connecting is active. Scrolling consumes, connecting creates. Scrolling fills time, connecting strengthens relationships, and that feels good. What if social technology was built for connection instead of scrolling? What if we spent less time scrolling and more time connecting? Maybe that's the better question. Connect some on Uchi. So that was the post that I shared, and when Harvey read it, he shared with me that it triggered a whole bunch of thoughts. So Harvey, please go ahead and share your thoughts.
Be glad to. Uh, Before I even share any thoughts, you've got to understand my perspective on this because I'm probably approaching it from a more educational background than I am from a family background or just a friend background.
So from a
So
learning and personal development kind of background.
exactly. So it triggered with me a whole bunch of thoughts about what we do with kids in the classroom. Um, in addition to some other thoughts outside that too, but in terms of kids in the classroom, our test scores in this country are going south quickly. There's no doubt about it. And everybody thinks, I don't think, and a lot of people don't
Well,
think,
we can
but
generalize, it's fine.
uh, that the way to better curriculum, more time at task, more money, more. We have a lot of answers, not all of them invalid. But the one thing we don't talk enough about, I don't think, is how teachers and adults in general connect with kids. Because I think you cannot curriculum your way out of this mess that we're in. You can build the best curriculum in the world, and if the kids don't see value in it, don't see relevancy in it, and aren't using it uh, other than in a superficial way in the classroom, then you're not going to get it. So I go back to a saying that Rita Pearson, who died a few years ago, but she said, "Kids don't learn from people they don't like." I think we need to spend a lot more time in the connectivity aspect of what we do with kids. That doesn't mean that we negate the curriculum aspect of it. That just means that when that child walks into the classroom, our first job is the child, not the curriculum. And we need to make that connection. And Uchi is one way to do that. Another way to do that is just the attitude of the teacher in the classroom.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, and I gave an example the other day to somebody that said that when a when a child, a new term that I had never heard before until lately, a child is dysregulated,
Yeah.
meaning they're bouncing off the wall, or they're not paying attention, or they're
Yeah.
causing
They're out of control.
control. And the person that posted the post said the best approach is to just ignore it and go on. Don't give feedback. Well, I agree with that in partial, but I don't agree with that in total. And my example was this: yes, if you can ignore it during the classroom and not give any feedback to the entire class, that's fine. But my technique was always, Johnny, stay after class a minute. I want to talk with you. And all I would say to Johnny is, Johnny, I didn't know you and I had a problem. Could you tell me what's going on, and do we have a problem with each other?
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes that would elicit a response. Something's going on at home. Something's going on with him that he doesn't like. He'd be bullied, whatever it might be. But it gives you a way to make a personal connection with
Yeah.
that student, and from that point on, there can be a discussion. And I always ended the conversation with, "My door is always open. Please don't take it out on the class. Let's do it together and talk about what's going on."
Let's do it together. That really that rings for
And
me.
it's amazing how many doors that opens, and how the connectivity that
Yeah, you
provides.
didn't hold him after class to yell at him and
No,
punish him. You
no,
held him after class so that you could talk about it and really hear his perspective.
exactly.
And I
Exactly.
think that's one of the biggest problems. So we talk about connection like, oh, teachers need to connect with their students. Okay, duh. I mean, who doesn't already know that? Okay. But
Exactly.
what we're missing is real intentional, regular, consistent, non-task oriented
Right.
connection. And thank you for mentioning Uchi. Uchi is my day job. I'm the creator of that app. For anyone listening who doesn't know
Yeah.
that, and Uchi is an app that helps people. It helps strengthen relationships, and it's available 24/7. But I had a teacher friend who was having trouble in their classroom, and I said to her, "What do you think about trying this little activity at the beginning of your class?" So Uchi is all based on answering questions. There's a whole
Mm,
database of questions. You answer questions, and you can only read your Uchi friends' answers, and you can only read their answer if you answer that question first. So you have to contribute in order to consume, which is the opposite of social media. So I asked this friend teacher of mine, what if you ask one question at the start of class? So it's a 50-minute class. You ask one question, you make sure you answer the question every time,
right.
and then randomly maybe choose 5 of your 30 students to answer that question. And they you raise their hand, whoever raised their hand, you'd call on them. And then this way, 5 students and one teacher, and this takes 5 minutes,
Sure.
at the front of class. And she did that several, like many times. And she's like, oh my God, Kevin, every time I started class with just some random question that a handful of students and I answered, my classes always went better.
Sure.
And the kids who were usually disruptive weren't as disruptive. Even if they didn't answer the question that day, they weren't as disruptive, because I think one of the biggest things that this activity does this free activity, this non-curriculum activity does is it gives students an opportunity to share their perspective and be a part of the class.
Right.
Everyone's a part of the class. And when teacher is answering as well, now we get to learn a little bit about each other.
Sure.
And that's it. 5 minutes at the front end of class for another 45 minutes. That is far more efficient and effective than what it probably would have been before. So
Absolutely. It's just simply a warm-up activity.
I love it. A
All
warm-up
teachers
activity.
do some type of warm-up activity, but a lot of times, or most teachers, but a lot of times it's a warm-up activity that the teacher does, leaves the students out.
Okay, leaves the students
And
out,
this
or
doesn't.
maybe it's a warm-up activity that is subject matter focused, like
Right.
course curriculum focused. Course curriculum is not connecting. Connecting is sharing who you are and how you see the world, and
Exactly right.
hearing how someone else sees the world. Then you start connecting. So we need to get away from this on task every single time and just connect as people first. And that's it. Does that make
That's
sense for school? I mean, I'm not an
absolutely.
educator. Does
No,
that
it's
make sense for
absolutely
school?
true. It's absolutely true. And whether you use Uchi or you use some, I saw something the other day that just amused me and made me think this teacher, and it wasn't even an American teacher. I think it was maybe Philippines or somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
And the teacher, she met her. It was little kids, like first graders or maybe kindergartners. She met them at the door, and she had a little post on the wall, and the kid could pick from the post.
Do I want a hug? Do I want a high five?
Do I have a high
Yeah.
five? Well, first of all, that makes kids feel welcome and feel really important coming.
Yeah, like welcome to the class. You belong here.
Secondly, it tells you something about where that child is at on that particular day, and that child may need some additional attention on that particular day. If they need the hug and they don't usually need a hug,
right?
Maybe something's going on that you better pay attention to,
and because
refer to a counselor, whatever.
Honestly, how well can a 5, 6, 7-year-old articulate how they're feeling? I don't even know that many 40, 50, 60, 70, 80-year-olds who can actually articulate how they're feeling.
Exactly.
So if we expect children to do that, good luck.
Yeah.
And then now we have the mental health crisis. You can't control yourself. And it's not about controlling yourself. I think this is where I'm now going off subject here, but this is where the mental health gets it so wrong. And this comes from 19th century psychologists and even 2,500-year-old philosophers, where if you can't control your every thought, feeling, action, and behavior, that your brain must be broken. And that's just not true.
Not true at all.
And that's the mental health industry and philosophy that we're operating from. And if you can't control yourself, well, one of the first things that's done is we medicate to numb you out, to control you.
And in education, the answer has been discipline.
Discipline, which is punishment, not discipline as in you are my disciple, which is where the word comes from, and I am teaching you and caring and helping support you through life. That's what a disciple and discipline is supposed to be. But what discipline has become is punishment.
Right.
And we get so much more, you catch more flies with honey than you do with vinegar.
And I will admit, I spent a stint as a vice principal in charge of discipline. And when you're in that position, you have a district policy that you have to pull.
Yeah, there are rules and response. Yeah, but a lot of it's CYA, and a lot of it is managed behavior through force.
Right.
And
the one advantage I had going into that position was that I came from a counseling position. I was a counselor for 8 years before I became a VP in charge of discipline. So yes, I did what I was required to do with the district policy. The kid had done some egregious thing. He got what he deserved. But I never ever let a kid, this were high school kids, but I never ever let a kid leave my office without a dose of counseling. You know, how could we avoid this in the future?
Yeah,
Can
some
you
kind of
come to me and
support.
talk to me when we're having a problem that might lead to this again?
Yeah.
You
But,
know,
I'm gonna push back just a hair on this. So, yeah, I'm all a fan of counselors and therapists. We certainly need all that. I'm not saying get rid of it or anything. Um, but again, with counseling and therapy, again, we're working on the behavior. How do we stop this behavior that I don't like or I don't find um, acceptable as an adult? When are we connecting? When are we really asking, what's going on at home? What's going on with your friends? Or just tell me something that you enjoy doing in life, like
it-
looking for
good.
four-leaf clovers on the playground or, playing in the dirt, whatever. What do you like to do in life?
The best counselors always are looking behind the behavior. What is going on? What's the reason for the behavior? How can I help this child
Well,
with
I believe they truly
what's
want to
causing?
help, but again,
Well, you got
so
to make the
often
connection
it's
first.
what's the first thing we could what's how do we stop that behavior right now? We got gun violence in schools. We got to have metal detectors and instant barriers that a teacher can pull down in a classroom to block the door. We need, bulletproof blankets for every student under their desk.
Yeah, I know.
What if we just really engage every student on a
Yep.
day-to-day basis so that every student feels like they actually matter in this world? Because, frankly, at home they may not feel like they matter at all, and then they
Right.
come to school and they're one of 30 kids in a classroom. Well, I don't really matter there. And I
Well,
know teachers are overwhelmed and blah 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 blah. I get it, but we've already shared an example that can be done in the first 5 minutes of any class as a warm-up for free. Or, the Uchi app is obviously available at scale where entire schools can start to see improvements in
right,
behavior in a matter of days of starting to use the Uchi app together and not just scrolling on social media, but
right.
connecting a few minutes a
The
day.
other side of that coin is if the connectivity is a real emphasis in a school, and if teachers and staff are really connecting with kids, and you do have a child who is, present terminology, dysregulated and
Mhm.
brings a gun to school,
Mhm.
if you have that connectivity, and if the kids know that they're safe in talking, they will tell you what's going on. That's your
Yeah.
best defense.
Yeah.
The
Yeah.
kids are your best defense.
Yeah, why not
And
get the knowledge firsthand? Because kids see what's going on that teachers don't even see. I mean, teachers see a lot, but kids see even more.
well, I, I'll tell you a story because you know I like telling stories. So this was before Columbine, and I was a middle school principal.
Mhm.
And I got a phone call from a parent that said X student had a gun at the dance. Well, I did what a reasonable person would do, I think, in that case. I called the county sheriff's office, and we had the child in, eighth grade boy, and we checked him out, and he had a cap gun.
Okay.
Well, now a cap gun would get you out of there in a minute because that's the law, but it wasn't then.
Mhm.
And so the county sheriff and I talked to the child about the issue, and that he had been seen with it, and blah, blah, blah. We did the whole thing. We called the parents. We let the parents know what was going on. But I didn't do any discipline with him. I didn't feel it was a case that needed discipline. He was a
Mm-hmm.
good student. So a week goes on, and there's a field trip, and I get a call from a parent that says this same kid had a gun out and he was threatening my daughter on the bus on the field trip, attempting to get her to do something sexual with him.
Mm.
Okay, this is a different story. And the parent says my daughter tells me that he carries the gun in his pocket at school and he's had it there for some time.
Right.
So I got the counselor and I said, go pull the kid out of class. I knew he always kept his coat over the back of his chair. So he went and pulled the kid out of class to talk to him about something. I went in and picked up the coat. Sure enough, there's a loaded 22 pistol in the pocket.
Wow.
So as a result of this entire thing, we find out that he'd had it there for some time and that he'd had it out. He'd been pointing it at teachers. He'd pointed it at kids, but nobody had divulged because he was their friend. He wouldn't do anything or, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
So it kicked us into gear with a whole systematic
Absolutely.
working
Yeah.
with the kids about divulging when it's safe to divulge and when it's not. Whatnot.
Yeah.
And as a backdrop to this, a few months later, another kid attempted to come to school with a gun. He didn't get through the door because I knew before from the kids before he ever walked into the building or got off.
Okay, so you had created that open enough relationship with the kids so that they could come to you and share, some of this really, when there's an imminent threat, you got to address it as fast as you possibly can. I mean, that's just,
Yeah,
that's a life and death, scenario. So,
but the purpose of me telling that story is not that we did the right thing. The purpose is that what you do with kids matters because they're your first line of defense
yeah.
in telling you what's going on in that school.
Yeah. And I'm sorry, just saying, oh, you can come to me anytime.
Yeah.
That doesn't undo 23 hours and 59 minutes of not feeling per day, of not feeling like you can actually go to a person.
Exactly.
You have to show it. You can't just say it. You have to show it. Just like you're not going to learn algebra just by someone lecturing, not even on a chalkboard, just lecturing, or even if it is just showing an example on a chalkboard, you're not learning algebra that way. You're not learning it unless you actually start doing it.
Right.
So if we don't start we talk even in all the social emotional learning curriculum, relationships is one of the 5 arms of SEL curriculum. When is it ever practiced? You don't learn something just by being told it. You have to practice it. And if we're practicing scrolling, getting back to the original post, if all we're practicing is, I was scrolling on Instagram the other day, or I was scrolling on TikTok the other day, or I was connecting on Uchi the other day.
Exactly.
That's a completely different scenario. So maybe that's a little bit of the shift and why this conversation. I mean, look, we've been chatting for about 30 minutes. That's a lot more than what we would have had, sharing a couple of sentences on a social media comment thread.
Exactly.
So
I absolutely agree with you. I mean, I didn't at the time. I don't think I really understood the importance of what I was saying, but I used to repeat often to my staff. We teach kids. We present curriculum in a way that kids can learn the curriculum, but we teach children.
Well, we teach children, and we need a foundation before. We need a foundation of, this is not psychological safety, it's emotional safety. And there's a difference, because psychological is a combination of mental and emotional. I can tell you, unless you've got some brain damage learning disability, which, that does happen in the world, but most kids, most people mentally cognitively, they're fine. They can learn,
Right.
they can follow instruction, whatever. The problem is there's no foundation of emotional safety. There's no foundation of real connection and belonging. So
Yeah.
then your amygdala hijacks your frontal lobe, and your mental health, which is really our thinking and decision making and controlling our behavior and feelings and so on, it's offline. So until we first nurture, support the foundation of emotional health, which is giving and
Right.
receiving love and connection and belonging, until you have a foundation of relationship, you're going to constantly struggle. And that's what we've seen over the last 100+ years in formal education. And that's what, honestly, we've seen throughout human history. We're only focusing on the task at hand
Right.
and not the person and the relationship that people have.
And in that regard, I've got to make one more comment. I know we're getting short on time here, but your post kicked something else into
Mm-hmm.
gear for me. What we do to kids' imagination. I really believe that imagination basically is the human superpower. I don't care what AI you're looking at. I don't care what smart tool you've got. It doesn't have an imagination.
Right.
I love dogs. I work with dogs all the time. Dogs don't have an imagination. They
Mm-hmm.
can't see what tomorrow might bring.
Right.
They can't, they live now.
Right. Like when
They,
you leave the house, they don't know if you're coming back.
exactly. But, but we as human beings can say, tomorrow I would like to do this, and
Mm-hmm.
we can carry it out. But what do we do to kids? What we
Yep.
say to kids is stay on task. You're daydreaming. Don't don't
Yeah,
think
well, we shut it
outside the
down.
box.
Yeah, we
But
just shut it down.
exactly. And instead we could be saying, Johnny, I see you're thinking about something. Share with us. What are we thinking about?
Yeah,
Let's
we'd like to
talk
learn
about
from
it.
you.
Yeah, exactly.
Mm-hmm.
Or,
Mm-hmm.
there's a billion different triggers that we could use to trigger kids' imagination rather than shut it down. And yet
Yeah.
we keep moving the curriculum down so that now we're teaching kindergartners math and to read and to do this. And we're doing the curriculum. That's great. No, it's not great. I think
Yeah.
kindergartners should be playtime. Basically, they should be learning connection. They should be learning uh, to get along, to play in
Well,
groups.
we need foundational elements, and we're
Exactly.
just not ever working on the foundational elements. And all we're ever really doing, and this isn't just education, this is around society, is
Exactly.
what we primarily do is we focus symptoms, or in other words, we
Right.
focus on behavior, and behavior is just symptoms. And if you have a foundation, the behaviors are naturally improved.
Right. But
So,
in education, the push is constantly we got to improve the test scores. Test scores got to be
well,
better.
because that's how we're valuing. It's just another example of how we value people by money, test scores,
Right.
education level. What kind of car you drive, how many muscles you have, how pretty you are. We're
Yeah.
always trying to find our value or assign value to something that doesn't actually matter in the overall scheme of things. It's not a foundational element, it's an outcome. If you don't have a foundation, then your outcomes are going to be worse. If you have a solid foundation, which emotional health and relationships is part of a key fundamental human foundation and basic need, then everything else takes care of itself and it just doesn't matter that much. You never hear someone on their deathbed saying, "Oh, I'm so happy I waited in line for 24 hours to get the new iPhone 18."
Yeah, or
You never hear someone on their
I should have
deathbed
worked
say,
harder in that geometry class.
yeah, oh, I wish I would have stayed longer and worked more overtime. I wish I would have skipped more of my
Yeah,
kids' play practice or play recital and soccer game. No, it's always, I wish I would have spent more time with my kids, with my family, with my partner,
right.
doing things that I love in the world that nurture me at my core, rather than, getting my TPS report done, by
Right.
Friday afternoon. So
Well,
anyway,
I
that kind of
totally
ends
get
on sort of a negative note, but thank you so much for being a part of really digging in deeper to a conversation just from, a post that was sparked in my brain about word choice and how we describe things. And look, it just opened up into almost a 40-minute
yeah,
conversation about the importance of really human connection and relationships and how fundamental it is in education and elsewhere, but with a highlight focus on education today. So
good.
thanks for being willing to share your perspective, Harvey. And if anyone wants to have conversations like this, scroll through any of my social media, find a post that resonates with you, reach out to me, and let's have a conversation about it. All right. So until next time, thanks again, Harvey. Peace, love, and connect.